Well, this is not about nostalgia. This is about who controls the narrative.
This is true.
And instead of that whole old versus new, which is kind of like what we talked about in our previous episode with Miami, today we're talking about memory and power. We're talking about history and myth. And we're also talking about voice versus silence. And some stories survive, others disappear. And not because they didn't matter, but because no one chose to remember them. And in a place like Florida, where history is layered, messy, and often rewritten, you have to ask, who decides what gets remembered and what gets erased? Today, I'm meeting with Aubrey, the person behind Florida Folk History. And in her platform, she not only documents Florida, she's actually interpreting it. So, Aubrey, welcome.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. So tell me, when did this start for you?
Honestly, I think it started as a girl. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my Mima, who she was part cracker. She had that deep-rooted Florida history and Central Florida, cowboys, all that kind of stuff. But then also she grew up in the Keys, and we have very strong conch ancestry. So I just grew up kind of hearing kitchen table stories from her first that got me really interested. Like, this is your place, this is where we're from, and there's good and there's bad, but it's how we came to be here. And so I grew up with those stories, but for a long time I kind of resented South Florida because I felt we didn't have a culture. And I thought, other places have cool cultures, and I want to be Seattle or some I didn't know where. I thought for a time I belonged in the deep South. I was into Faulkner. I was like, I belong somewhere like Southern Gothic, whatever. And as it turns out, I tried living in Levy County, and no, the grass is not always greener, and like, home is where your heart is, and my heart is here, my roots are here. And so when it comes to, who remembers what, a lot of it all comes down to you. That's been kind of a theme that's been recurring in my life. My grandmother, before she passed, she had dementia, and she gave me The Little Red Hen, a children's book, and I didn't really understand at the time why. But, The Little Red Hen is, I'll do it myself. And that's kind of my philosophy in life now, is it's just like, you can't depend on other people to do it for you, because they're probably not. Like, you have to be the one. If something is important to you, then you have to be the one to make it significant and to give it a voice. So that's kind of been my thing, is I don't want Florida to be remembered for just Mickey Mouse and South Beach, There's a Florida I know and love, and we do have a strong culture, and we do have incredible history across the entire state. But obviously, my passion is South Florida, and I think that's what gets touristified the most. South Florida, Miami, the Keys. Redland doesn't even get a blip on the radar, but like, we're out here, and it's so important for me, like Redland and Homestead, because it's changing so much. Some for the better, but a lot for the worse. We're here at Robert is Here, and Lennar Homes is building developments everywhere. They have no aesthetic. They have no cultural connection. They're expensive as hell, cheaply built. And I'm like, this is not what I want for my home. I don't want my home to become, you look over here, it's nothing but farmland and beautiful, tropical fruits, and times where I feel very much, it's a losing battle. And I want to give up, but then I'm like, no, because if I give up, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to take a stand, and so it's very important for me to remember South Florida as it was, but try and preserve as much as I can to keep it going for future generations.
Listening to you and your passion and the way you speak about Florida, like, it sounds like it's all very much heritage and ancestry that ignited this passion for history, right?
It is. I have really deep roots, like about 7 generations on the cracker and the comp side. And, we have great ancestors that did amazing things. Like, my ancestor, Temple Penn, he was the first territorial representative, senator, and justice of the peace of Dade County. He was an early settler.
Wow.
And he was a wrecker. He was essentially a pirate, like, would orchestrate wrecks to profit off of them. just a cool guy in general. He eventually became the lighthouse keeper of Key Biscayne. And
El Farito.
Yeah, El Farito. I have it tattooed on the... And he died. That was how he retired and died on the sea. But to me, the most significant thing about him was that he was a Seminole sympathizer during the wars and was allied with the Tiger Tail clan. And he used to play fiddles for their ceremonies, their dances. And so he brought music instead of violence, you know, and genuinely believed that people should get along, could get along. So it's important to me because I don't like when people say, well, things have always been this way, people have always been divided, and that's always how it's going to be. I'm like, no, there's always been forward-thinking people. They just were in the minority or called crazy at the time, but history remembers them correctly. And, you know, you having those people, like my grandmother was an incredible woman. She was the first female fire commissioner of Dade County.
Wow.
And she achieved all of this as a single woman. You know, she was divorced. Her husband was an alcoholic and a cheat. And she did not remarry. You know, it would have been the easiest thing with 4 small children to just find a new man to take care of them. She said, no, I'm not risking that. She got into real estate, was in the right place at the right time. Miami was just started booming. You know, if she had been 10 years earlier, she would have been too early for feminism. She couldn't, you know, they wouldn't have allowed her to do what she did. And if she'd been 10 years later, she might have missed the boat. So she was just in the right place at the right time and built up a lot of Kendall. She owns Sunset Feed. She owned the Chuck Wagon, which she bought because it was her favorite restaurant. She didn't own it at the time, and she wanted to get seating. And they said, no, the priority seating is for the men at lunchtime who are doing business. She said, well, I'm a businesswoman. They didn't believe her. So she said, fine. And I have newspaper articles to prove it. She said, fine, I'll buy the place and I'll sit wherever I want. And she did.
Wow, Mima. That's
Mima,
a legend.
Yeah. So I came from people that, you know, that did things differently and weren't afraid to take risks. And you know, I never questioned, you know, that you could achieve greatness. I think is probably the biggest thing. Is
it's embedded in you.
Yeah, in a way, I always kind of felt, and when my grandmother passed, I did feel that tremendous weight of legacy of like, how do you live up to a woman like that? And you know, being recently, that was just before I got divorced. We'd been married 15 years, never had kids, so I went through a lot of self-doubt and just how do I follow in her footsteps, you know, like what am I gonna give to the family, because I don't have a biological legacy to pass down. Now how am I gonna serve my role in this story, you know, and I want to live up to her somehow. So that's kind of been my mission, is just, you know, I have to figure out what's gonna be on my tombstone one day. I think a lot about that, like not in a morbid way, but like, you know, at the end of the day, when you hang your hat, what are people going to say about you? And something that I study ancestry a lot is most people will be forgotten in 2 generations.
Yeah.
Your grandchildren might remember you, but your great grandchildren won't. I meat a lot of people that they have no idea what their great grandparents were like, and that's such a short removal away. Forget about your great grandparents, your great grandparents. And when I study, you know, like in my own family, the generational patterns and how far people have come, but also there's a lot we haven't come from, you know, that we're still figuring out. So
it takes 4,000 people for us to get here.
It's incredible, yeah. It seems like a lot, but it's really not.
No.
So yeah, it's just every decision, you know, that your ancestors made, every right or wrong, all ended up to you being here, which is amazing to me. And so that's why kind of uncovering these family stories has been so, like, it's been very affirming for me, you know, and it gives you a sense of place and a sense of purpose and like, okay, like I'm a part of something bigger than me. And it took a lot for me to be here, and I have to rise to my own occasion, I think is what I take from all that.
You know, earlier when I was driving down here, I was listening to this South Londonese artist. Her name is Green Tea Payne.
Oh, I love her.
Okay, and she has a song. It's titled Prisoners. And there's this line that stuck with me. She said, with all your spells and instruments of division, there are still those who keep a clear vision. Mm-hmm. And listening to you, thinking about legacy and I'm thinking about ancestry and heritage, and you talk about Florida in a way that is not just a state or where you grew up with, like where you grew up. Like that's how I kind of feel about Florida. I feel like for you it's more like, well, this is the story of Florida that people think they know.
Right.
And they're wrong.
Right.
You know, because we're so constantly divided. But it seems like your vision is clear and focused. And, you know, tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, it took many hands for Florida to be here. And we don't talk about, in my opinion, enough. You know, Flagler gets his flowers. Everybody knows about Jimmy Buffett. And it's all mostly white dudes. And that was kind of my biggest thing is I want to make sure everybody is as represented as best as possible. I'm not a historian, you know, I'm not an expert in anything, but I know that it took all people and people you wouldn't think either, you know, like the Asian American community out here. Who do you think we got so many of these tropical fruits from? They're out here, they're just not in big numbers and they don't get the recognition they deserve, but it took immigrants, it took natives, it took all sorts of people coming together to build what we have today. And so I want to make sure that, you know, when I talk about Florida, I don't just talk about the safe, sugar-coated, sanitized stuff, because there's a million other Florida history accounts that are doing that. I want to talk about the stuff that it sometimes can be the hard stuff, but it's necessary to learn from it. One, so we don't repeat it. But also just to pay it homage, you know, because like I said, it did take a lot for us to be here. Not all of it was good. And there was a lot of good too. I think that's the other thing is, you know, people can focus on the negatives of history and the suffering, whatever, but there was also joy, faith, humor. So there's just so much that goes into a region and what makes it unique, whatever. We just have such a different lifestyle. And when you meet South Floridians, especially, you know, we do have a different way of life. We do have a different culture. We speak differently. When I met you, it just was so natural. I just felt like I didn't have to put on any, like, you know, airs.
We're family. Exactly. Every Miami person is family.
And it's so funny because you meet, even like outside of Miami, like we can like smell each other. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm white as hell too, but it's a cultural fusion. Like I grew up thinking I was Cuban, so I was probably in kindergarten, first grade, and somebody had to tell me that I wasn't Cuban. I went home, was very distressed about it. Like, Mom, we're not Cuban. And she's like, no, honey, we're white. I was like, what? But we eat picadillo and ropa vieja, and we do noche buena and quinceañeras. And she's like, no, we're white. I was like,
that reminds me of one of my friends too. She has her background's from Pittsburgh, but she was born and raised in Miami. And when everybody was going through their quinceañera craze, right, she wanted a quinceañera, and she went to her mom, and her mom was her mom was like, I'm sorry, honey. I mean, we're white. You can have a sweet 16. She goes, but I want a quinceañera. And she was just devastated.
Yeah. But it's everybody's an honorary Cuban down here. You have to be
Cuban by association. Yeah, exactly. I always say it.
And but it's I'm so grateful to have grown up here for that reason, because I also didn't question multiculturalism
at all.
You know, I was the minority usually. I knew a couple other white people. Everybody else was from somewhere else. Everybody looked different, and you know, and that was beautiful to me that no two people look alike in Miami. And I just, the different languages all around me, and I just felt it is such a rich way to grow up. You know, like just sitting here now, again, we're surrounded by every kind of tropical fruit tree you can imagine. So when I moved out of Miami and I brought my neighbors in Levy County some pico de gallo, and they wouldn't try it because it had cilantro, I was like, I gotta move back home. I can't.
Oh my God. Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, I lived in Southern Oregon, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
But you have to kind of see that the grass, is the grass greener or not? And then you're like, you know.
Yes, I completely agree. And I feel like a lot of the transplants romanticize, you know, the concept of Florida.
Right.
And what has been romanticized, in your opinion?
Everything. I think, you know, people have an idea. Well, first of all, everyone thinks you're 5 minutes from the beach. Like, I'm like, no, like I'm closer to the Everglades. Like, it's like
7 miles away.
30 minutes to get to the beach at least. You can't just walk to the beach. And it's, I think they have, it's the tourist version of it, that it's a party all the time, which is pretty chill, I'm not gonna lie. Like, we have a chill lifestyle, but you know, we have history that's so deep and rich, like RF Orchids here. The Fuchs own it, and they used to be the bakers of Redland, you know, and that was 100 years ago. And now they're these orchid experts, and I just think it's a super cool story. And just what it took to settle South Florida, like for people to actually be here, was such a, for better or worse, you know, the whole draining of the Everglades and like I've been researching now for my book, the train, the overseas railroad, the overseas highway, like connecting all the islands and everything. Like it took a lot of labor. My ancestor died in the 1920s because he was an immigrant. He could not get jobs that he was qualified for. He was a master electrician in his home country, but could not get a job because he was an immigrant, and worked in construction and died in Wynwood building a grocery plant. The factory door fell on him and crushed him.
Wow.
So, you know, it like literally like blood, you know, people died building the overseas highway and stuff. Like it took a lot for people to be here.
And it's been ignored intentionally as well. Yeah, I think that.
When you talk about romanticizing, there's a lot of dark history in Florida. The tourism industry has done a really good job of sanitizing it so that you don't go these places and they have, you know, these things aren't remembered, because it does put a stain on things.
Erasure. Yes.
But, you know, where I was at the farm was 30 minutes from Cedar Key, which is near the site of Rosewood, which is one of the worst racial massacres, you know, not in just Florida, but in the South.
Yeah.
You know, that was terrible, and over a false rape accusation. They destroyed an entire town, killed so many people, and even now they have to keep the documents under lock and key in the library, because people go and try to steal them, descendants, because their ancestors were out and proud saying, yes, I was part of the mob and I killed this many people and and so they're not proud of that history, which is understandable, but you can't erase it. It is what it is. You know, and the moment we start trying to erase or whitewash history like that, sanitize it, make it safe, then we're liable to repeat it, because then people say it wasn't that bad.
It
didn't happen that way. It's an exaggeration. No, these things are not exaggerated. You have to understand, you know, and that's where, like I said, it takes so many hands to make a city, to make a state. And I don't know why we start history with the 13 colonies when it should be Florida. We have the oldest history. This was ground zero for everything, for slavery, for colonization,
everything.
For the forced spread of religion, which is why people are like, why you so talk about Catholicism all the time for your book? Because Catholicism and Florida are so deeply intertwined, but the whole world, you know, was shaped by Catholicism. It was a driving force behind colonization, and so, you know, I think different cultures connect on that as well. You know, it happened in Cuba, it happened in Mexico, it happened in the Philippines, it happened. I mean, literally, the first city in Florida was St. Augustine. St. Augustine. So from St. Augustine down to Key West, you go to Key West, there's Catholic imagery everywhere.
San Agustin, all the names, everything's in Spanish.
That too. So that's kind of my thing too. Is as a white person, it's kind of funny because, like, there was a bit of a mentality for a long time that, like, the Latinos pushed us out, and it's like, did they really? It's kind of like Florida returned back to itself in a way.
Our Hispanic roots, if you will.
Our roots have always been Latino.
Yeah.
And even as far as, like, you're being multilingual, that's an aspiration of mine as well. I'm very shaky with my Spanish. I would like to improve my Spanish, because there's just no downsides to being multilingual. It only makes you smarter and able to connect with more people.
It's cultural currency. That's what I say.
You look at other countries, you go to Germany, they speak German, they speak French, they speak Italian, at least a little bit.
All of them.
You know?
Or they try at least, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's so important. And that part of Florida also gets erased, you know, our language, our culture. And again, we go back to what gets erased in our Florida history, and we talk about, is it people? Is it culture? Is it places? Is it, language? Now, is it accidental or intentional?
I think it's both. I think sometimes that people just maybe remember too late to start asking important questions. When it comes to family, people get older, they start forgetting things, and so you lose that vital link to the past.
Storytelling.
I've always been, my elders tell a story. I've always, even since I was a young girl, honed in. But some of it is absolutely intentional. I believe, and coming from South Florida, how can you not believe in cultural fusion? That's kind of the beauty of this place, is everybody brings something to the table and we all influence each other. And you see everybody wears hoop earrings, everybody's drinking their cafecito. Doesn't matter where you come from, it becomes part of you. So, and that's a beautiful thing. And you can keep your unique culture as well. You can keep your heritage, but also at the same time, everybody's sharing kind of and having a community, and we all have these threads that connect us. So I just think it's a wonderful thing.
It's keeping voices alive. It's connecting.
It is. And so I'm very proud to be from Florida, from South Florida particularly.
Me too.
And it just, that's what I want to show people, not just with my platform on Instagram, but now transitioning into, I've always really wanted to do historical fiction. That's where my true passion is. And now it's like I want to give people the Florida I know, especially the Keys, because the Keys out of everything is so touristified. Key West is, and then I feel bad because people ask me all the time, well, tell me facts about Key West. And I'm like, honestly, I know two things about Key West: my family history and ghost stories. And that's kind of what my book is like.
But yes, because you're an artist, you're a writer, and now, do you see your work as preservation? I do. I have put so much of not just my family history, but Florida history in this book, and my Florida, and in my Instagram as well. I don't post anything unless it's meaningful to me. People ask me all the time, do this, do that, and I'm like, I'll look into it, but I want to talk about the stuff that has impacted me, and that I want people to know about is important to me, that it, I get so much nostalgia just looking around and God, I see an ibis, or I see the mango trees in bloom or whatever. Like, that's my Florida, not just the beach, not just Scarface, No, the ceiba trees, yes.
The poincianas when they're red and oh my God, just those little things. But then when you connect with another person from Florida and they get it, it's just different. And I don't know, it's just, I do think that I'm trying to preserve Florida, even in my fiction. I want to show people, well, especially how goth Florida is too. Like, it's sunshine, it's paradise, but then the sun goes down and it's got some creepy stuff.
It's like Swamplandia.
Swamplandia is an amazing book.
Very good. I feel like, so would you say that is storytelling a form of resistance for you?
Absolutely. It keeps your heritage, your culture alive. It keeps hope alive, because you have so many stories of like I said, look how far and how much sacrifice it took and struggle for you to be here today. It keeps you rooted. When you have a sense of purpose and a sense of place, it becomes very hard to, it is very hard to make a person back down. Because you have a strong sense of place and perseverance. So that's why for me, it's like, I do feel like I stand up and fight, because it's not just a place that I live. It's in my bones, and I'm not gonna, it's just more than home to me. It's where my memory is. It's where I don't know. It's almost hard to put into words, because I feel it so deeply, just that this is a place worth protecting. And also worth putting on a world stage too. Like, people need to know, because if it's not known, that's when other people can project what they want onto it. When you have that strong sense of self, and that happens even in your personal life, I feel too. When you have a strong sense of self and character, people can't influence you.
So you talk about the storytelling, and what responsibility comes with telling those stories?
That's probably the hardest thing is, again, like I feel sometimes a little bit reticent to do these things because I'm not from these cultures. I'm an outsider. So, I feel kind of a double-edged sword with that, because on the one hand, as an ally, you want to focus and uplift, cultures outside of your own that have been marginalized, but at the same time, you want to do it correctly, and it's a bit difficult. So that's why I've even thought about, in the future, like I would like to get more community members on board, at least with Florida folk history, and have alternate perspectives, not just my own, people that are actually historians, because I don't consider myself a historian. I consider myself a storyteller. And so I do research, and there's stuff that I've done a tremendous amount of research and I'm very proud of, but I'm not in
yes,
that's Florida.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not in the archives, like doing the hands-on research. I'm not, I take that kind of dry information and I pick out like, oh, this is what's meaningful. This is what most people would miss. And then I interpret it in such a way that makes people understand why it's important.
Yes. Especially with the Florida tribes, right? And
exactly.
the folklore. And, we are in Homestead. We are so close to the Keys. And, there are roosters all around us. We're here. Robert is here, which is a symbolic, emblematic location for us as Miami, Florida kids.
Home. And there's so many little things about it that make it so special. And, but memory is such a huge thing. That's definitely something my book touches on, is when that memory comes flooding back to you, and it's just like, it remembers you before you even remember yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And, memory is not just thoughts either. It's smells, it's feelings, it's texture, it's the sound, like for me, the sound of gravel under your feet. Other places you walk and it's maybe you walk on concrete, maybe you walk on dirt, so you have a soft sound. But for me, the sound of walking in Florida.
Being here in Homestead, we again, Robert is here, such a symbolic place, so ingrained in our childhood and memory, and like there are kids, right now petting the animals and feeding them, and it's very communal. It feels communal. Even the people that aren't from here, I can see a couple tourists.
How multicultural it is too. You see everyone from different walks of life, old, young, different countries, different tourists from all over the world come here. It's really amazing. It brings people together, and but then you have across the street such development. So it's symbolic to me on multiple layers, because it's like, this is what we're trying to preserve, and that's what's on our doorstep. And if we don't step up now to fight it, they're gonna win. Because right now we're letting it happen. It's kind of what I feel is where my biggest frustration is that we have more of a voice, more platform than ever, and people aren't using it. They don't think their voice matters. And I'm like, how do you think I got where I am? I just started talking. Yeah. I wasn't an expert on anything, didn't have a following to begin with. I created that just by not shutting up, just keep going and this is what's important. And other people will, there are other people out there that feel the same way. And I
definitely do, absolutely.
Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Exactly.
It sounds corny, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah. And now you talk about the Keys, right? You're also very passionate about the Keys. So now, what does the Keys remember that Miami doesn't?
A lot. The Keys keeps its culture, and it's at risk of gentrification too, but it's a laid back lifestyle. They're not even if people are wealthy down there, they live really humble, and it's just they stay very close to nature and community. I think is the number one thing is island culture. You're kind of forced to, similar to like a small town, everybody knows each other.
Subtropical culture,
Everybody's dependent on each other. You have a hurricane, sometimes the islands are completely cut off. So you have to depend on each other, which means you have to have strong community. You have to get along with people that are different from you. And islands attract all kinds of people because they're ports, people, sailors come all over from the world. And so, like Key West has always been a very multicultural place. That's a lot of where the Cuban influence started, was Key West.
Yep.
So, we got this cigars, cafe con leche on every street corner down there. Like we go to Five Brothers. My grandmother grew up Five Brothers, yeah, and that's where she would get cafecito and bollos. And again, like we didn't. It was just food for everybody. It wasn't, So yeah, it's just the Keys remembers a lot. I think they're better about preservation of architecture in general. They keep the old buildings, which keeps the character, Can you imagine if the Keys all look like South Beach with these modern houses? It would be a completely different place. Instead, you've got these historic homes with the whitewashed clapboards and the shutters and the porch. Like, don't even get me started.
Cottages.
Me in a wraparound porch. Oh.
I see you already with your rocking chair.
Yeah. I'm an 80-year-old woman.
Yeah, I say I'm like 60, 65, right? But yes, I totally feel that.
Oh, for sure.
Now, do you think that different parts of Florida, like, remember different versions of the same story?
I think so. I mean, but they're so separate in a lot of ways too. It's funny because, like, people really do isolate a lot. Like, when I lived in Levy County, I knew people that had never been to Miami. And I'm like, why? It's 5 hours away. People come from across the world just to come see Miami.
Yep.
And it's basically in your backyard. You should at least go once. They had no interest. And I have people that are from Miami that they see Florida as one entire big stretch of nothing. And they're like, well, Miami's where it's at. So if I travel, I go travel in New York, I go travel some big place, or I go down to the Keys to party. But the rest of Florida is nothing.
Yeah, nobody goes to the Springs. Nobody. Yeah, it's true.
That's wrong.
It's
true.
Then,
even when it comes to the Keys, a lot of the Keys people, they're like, I won't go to the mainland. No. I won't. There's nothing for me in the mainland. And so, like, yeah, everybody kind of has their own version of it. And I'm guilty of it too, because I'm South Florida through and through, and I'm like, subtropical or nothing, baby.
Yeah, I live in the Treasure Coast now, and I'm like, I'm from Miami. Like, it's different. I mean, fortunately, a lot of the people that are around me are like alumni and like older Miami people that have moved up north, but it's still, we grasp onto that, and that story is powerful. I feel like that's where a lot of people's power lies, is with that memory of storytelling and the versions of their upbringing that they remember. So we go back to, Florida storytelling, and now who gets to be the storytellers in Florida?
That's the thing is right now, it's even in textbooks, like you learn in history class, we did not learn much about Florida history specifically in history class.
Nicosuke, Seminole,
no, they don't get any mention at all. I learned so much of it on my own, and so when it comes to who's telling Florida's story, yeah, it's like I kind of felt like nobody really is, or the voices aren't being heard. So that's why I kind of took it upon myself. I was like, if I think something's important, I got to be the one to talk about it, or else I can't depend on other people to do what you got to be the change you want to see in the world.
That part.
So I just felt that there wasn't really anyone telling Florida the way I saw it. There's other authors who write about Florida, like Carl Hyacin, but it's like all heisty and like, this like gritty.
Or Hemingway and the Keys. He had his turn.
Yeah, it's my time to shine, and even like I have such a bone to pick with A Land Remembered. And people are like, that's the Florida classic. How could you insult? And I'm like, listen, it's. I'm not saying don't read it. It's a good book, very detailed, and I think the whole comparing the decline of the family to the decline of Florida it's very poignant, but. As a woman, there's a lot I didn't like about it. I could tell it was written by a man.
Precisely.
And it was also written by someone who's not from Florida. He's from Mississippi. And I'm like, you want a book about old Florida, honey? I have Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, okay? She wrote Florida. She may not have been from Florida, but she immersed herself in cracker culture.
She did Florida justice.
She lived and breathed and died like a Floridian. And her writing blows Patrick D. Smith out of the water. But my personal favorite is Zora Neale Hurston, because she wasn't Floridian, was a woman of color also, so had that experience. And nobody writes Florida like those two. I'm sorry. And if you want old Florida, get it from the horse's mouth. I don't know why we put Patrick D. Smith up there as the end-all be-all when we have two women that he can't hold a candle to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I agree.
Some of the things Marjorie Keenan Rawlings and Zora have written, I would give my right arm to have written that. Like when Zora compared in Their Eyes Were Watching God, she used the seasons of citrus ripening to describe the passage of time. So it was all the historical accolades and things like this, and those stories get told the most. Flagler gets talked about endlessly. Everything named after him. You know, just it's and I hate to be white men, but like it's just the fact of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like women don't get a voice. We're just kind of relegated to the background.
We're just yentas. It's just yapping,
you know, we were there to have babies and cook so the men could do awesome stuff. And it's like, no, my ancestors who were Florida women did some cool shit.
Yeah.
You know, they were out there surviving like anybody else. And, you know, it took so many hands. And I think also marginalized people just don't, you know, everybody, that's the biggest thing for me, honestly, too, is it's the common folk. It's the everyday folk that I care about. I've never really cared about the big
little
battles.
people.
It's what were the little people doing, you know, like how, because that's where I come from.
We are the little people,
yeah,
absolutely.
And just how did people get through? It just amazes me. How did people even live in Florida before AC, before mosquito control? You know, they were out here in a brutal wilderness. You know, this was the last frontier.
It sure was.
And just what it took for people to come here, but then they were die hard is the other thing, is they did not leave. When you came to Florida, you stayed in Florida.
Yeah.
So there obviously had to be something to love about it. And they stayed and pushed through, and again, that's why we're here today, enjoying this beautiful sunshine.
It's like the ibis, right? Is that the ibis, which is the bird that leaves?
They know when to leave and when to come back from a hurricane. I mentioned that in my book as well. It's in the first chapter.
There you go.
And that's a Seminole Miccosukee belief as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and it's just so deeply ingrained. That's why we have the hurricanes. It's the ibis. People go, why you have this silly ass bird? It's not just a silly ass bird.
It's not just a bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's got huge significance for us, but that's like the culture and heritage that I want people to know is there is so much. I mean, just look at an ibis, dude. Where else are you gonna see an ibis in the United States? Maybe Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe. But we got so much here: flamingos, manatees, key deer, like a fairy tale,
It really
These little
is.
deers that will come straight up to you, size of a dog. Just incredible. And
Swamp puppies.
Me and alligator—that's my obsession.
Well, I see you have a tattoo.
Oh, yeah. And that's
nice
by a girl. This hard ass tattoo.
Look at that.
But like tarpon fascinate me. I've been learning about tarpon for my book, and they just are. We take them for granted. These incredible ancient animals. They haven't changed. First of all, in 100 million years, these animals have not changed at all because they don't need to. Nope. They're perfect the way they are. And what's amazing is they start out almost microscopic, as big as they get. They start out
they do.
Little larvae, then they get bigger, then they shrink. Incredible. And then some of them are 80 years old, the big ones. And they're so smart that you can't fool a tarpon twice. So you have to hook them, you know, in the first couple goes, because once they recognize your lure, they're not going to go after it again. And again, some of them are so old, they've seen every lure under the sun, like handmade lures we're never even going to see in our life.
It's fascinating.
And hooking them is just as hard because their mouths are hard as rock and they fight like hell. So it's like, I learned from tarpon fishermen, it's like the goal of tarpon fishing isn't even to get one in the boat. If you just get one on the line, you had a good day of tarpon fishing. So it's just fascinating to me. There's so much, again, that we take for granted, being from here, that it's just amazing. Just just a beautiful place to be, and we're so blessed, but it can easily be taken right from under us, you know, and that's why it's so important to preserve it and to fight for it and to remember it, because who's in charge of memory? You and me.
Exactly.
You and me.
Exactly. And going back to memory, which is such a powerful topic, do you think social media is changing that?
Absolutely. I think people's short-term memory, long-term memory are being affected. I think that people they're just in a loop of just constantly being inundated with entertainment. So they're not thinking about long-term things, and they're constantly consuming.
Yeah.
And that's probably my thing, is like, as you know, social media is kind of the engine that runs my career in a way, but I spend as little time on my phone as possible because I'm constantly creating. I feel like if I'm just sitting for too long consuming, I'm like, I get anxious because I'm wasting time, and I could be creating something. And I just, you know, I don't understand. Like, I had a younger person show me like TikTok. I don't use TikTok. And they were like showing me on their phone their algorithm, and they were watching stuff like, it was literally people watching TV, like a recording of somebody watching TV and their commentary. And they're like, well, you just don't get it. It's funny. And I'm like, I don't get why you would want to watch someone else watch TV. Like, I don't get that at all.
Oh my God.
So I think it is affecting things. And I think that people, you know, it makes it easy in some ways to be vocal about things that are important to you. But then I think sometimes too, people think, well, I did my part. I reposted a story.
So we keep going back, you know, on memory. We talk about all these beautiful things that make up South Florida, all these stories that we're personally responsible for keeping alive. And listening to you is just so refreshing. I'm like absorbing everything, because there are so many things that I want to say as well. And I feel like these platforms give us the tools to do so, but it's a fine line, you know, between misinformation and passion to brain rotting.
Oh, for sure,
right?
For sure. And that's a huge thing for me too, is, you know, people will send me a lot of like AI history and stuff, and like I'm like, oh, like this is making me so nervous, because I see that people want to learn the history, but it's incorrect history, or it's not well researched, or, you know, God, I've seen, you know, AI images of like Osceola, and they just put Native American man, so he's got a headdress on and teepees in the background, and I'm like, I'm glad people are learning about Osceola, but at the same time, this is not
wrong.
Yeah, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of brain rot going on, and I want to combat that. You know, I want to give people a reason to go on the apps and learn something and have fun doing it too, because at the end of the day, I'm not just some nerd sitting at home. You know, I'm a Floridian living life. You know? I'm the real deal.
Yes.
You know, that's my other thing is I'm out here, like, everything I write is from experience. Like, half the stuff in my book is just real shenanigans I've gotten into.
Yeah, same. I feel like what I teach ultimately isn't what academia has taught me, is what I've lived. And that's experience. What this podcast has really been all about. And not that I'm not catering to everybody, not that I'm not trying to get, you know, all the exposure I can, but I want to be specific about the exposure. It's a niche crowd, and I want to keep it that way.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with being a cult favorite, you know, like, because it means I've hit the right buttons that I'm trying to hit. I'm not trying to hit all the buttons. I'm trying to hit specific buttons, you know. And,
yes.
I like, even like with my book, I know it's not a mass appeal book. I don't care if it's gonna hit with the right people, and the right people are gonna be like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, and now with your book, like I love that, because again, it's storytelling. What do you feel personally responsible for keeping alive with this book?
Definitely one, my family history has been, I've always wanted to write about my family history, but didn't just want to write a straight biography. So a lot of the characters are inspired, not just my immediate family, but my ancestors that I've done so much research on. I use family names, you know, real inspirations from things that have happened, and just the general character, the way, my family is very big on family history, but everybody tells a story in a different way. You know, like my grandmother could tell the same story as her brother, but in two different versions, and you're gonna get two, you know, like her brother would tell things very matter-of-factly, and he could look at you in the face, like his wife died in the storm of the century. And I've seen him tell that story to a 5-year-old child and not even blink, you know, not even, because he's just, whether he has trauma or not trauma, he just is very matter-of-fact about it. But if you ask my grandmother about it, she would tell you in great detail about it, but had such a specific way. Everything ended up being about her, you know? So it was how she experienced. My brother called me first, and I saw him. It wasn't just that he came out in his underwear crying. I saw him in his underwear crying. And then, you know, she would, of course, talk about how she met Bill Clinton out when he came. And it always comes back to her, how, you know? And so to find out the true story, you do have to interpret kind of between the lines, and people don't remember things correctly. That's another thing that I impress upon in my book, is even in a relationship, if a relationship ends, you get two sides of a story. Who's the right one?
Yes.
Is somewhere in the middle, because one person interpreted it this way and the other person interpreted it this way. This person remembers things that happened. This person remembers things that happened. And so the truth is always somewhere in the middle. And I want also with my book to just give people a historical Florida that's accurate, but that there's so much of that still echoes today. You know, and like with my book, I was very specific. Like I wanted the places that inspired the settings, I wanted to be real places so that you could walk, you know, it's pretty much a block radius from Truman Street over to Olivia Street in Key West, where the book takes place. And you could look and say, look, that's Alma's house, you know, that's where there's St. Mary's, that's where this went down. And these are real places that still exist, you know, and
Points of reference.
Yeah, and it's been very fun crafting a story around, you know, and so now I go down there and it's like it feels real.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. I can't wait. You know, I'm gonna read it.
Oh, for sure.
I'm right there. I'm waiting.
Bro, I'm excited.
When it comes to this storytelling, what would you hate to see erased completely?
You know, what we're already seeing erased already is the land, the culture. And the human history too is like, you know, I think that's for me the number one thing is just whether it's a building that was built by human hands, whether it's a farm, you know, that gets paved over for a new development, that was human hands. And I just feel that you know, that is what's important, is tell the human stories, tell the stories of individual people. And it's kind of, again, going back to that whole legacy thing, it freaks me out very much of like, you know, if you don't do something with your life or somebody doesn't remember you, you're gonna be forgotten. And I go to the Key West Cemetery and I look around and I go, how many lives? And I don't know their stories. I don't know if their descendants know their stories. You're just lost to time.
Yes.
And so if somebody doesn't start recording them and making them important, then it is just dust in the wind.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And
going back to legacy,
yeah.
You know, what do you want people to remember 50 years from now?
About me or Florida?
In general.
Well, in 50 years, I hope that Florida is still remembered as being a place that has such a rich foundation and such a rich heritage, and it is multicultural, and that I hope that people remember how much it took for us to be where we are today, how much hard work, how much vision, because that's what keeps you going for the future, is knowing, for me, knowing that other people accomplished this, so can I. I think that's, even with my family history, is seeing that there was greatness in my family. I can achieve that too. Anybody can achieve anything they put their minds to. So I do want people to remember that, like, anything is possible if you make it possible. But it does all come down to you saying, you know, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be the one to do this. If not me, who? Has kind of been my mantra lately. And I think, as far from me, I just want people to know that I did the best that I could. And so, yeah, I just hope people know that I did the best I could with what I was given, and I never, never stop believing in the good in people. Is my other thing. Is I believe the world is a good place for the most part. I believe most people are good. I don't see people as being others for me. I see them as part of a larger human family. And
he agrees. You know, Aubrey, listening to your story reminds us that history isn't just what happened, right? It's what we choose to carry forward.
And it's what's happening now.
Yes. And in a place like Florida, right, where so much gets buried, under this freaking development and tourism and time, right? Remembering becomes a choice.
It absolutely
right? That's my take on this. And I usually do thought experiments at the end of my episodes. It's just homework, but that's such a dreadful word. Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, but here's my real question for all my listeners. What are you all choosing to remember? And Aubrey gives us a nice little lens on Florida and its history and how it has impacted her life and her legacy. And I can't wait to read you, and I'm looking forward to future interviews for sure.
For sure. This is going to be the first of many. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your story, for giving us some knowledge. And, if you enjoyed this episode, y'all know what to do. Share, like, subscribe, follow, and say dale like you mean it.
Dale.